are present. Could we please stand for the flag salute? Charlotte, can you give us a flag salute, please?
Please rise, place your hand over your heart, and join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have no cards for public comments. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the Camarillo Library Board on items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? No amendments. Consent calendar.
Move the approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and approval for second. Please vote. That motion passes 5-0. Now we'd like to have our report from our library representative. All the great activities going on there.
Yes, wonderful. So happy to be here. Thank you both. We have a wonderful set of events that we had accomplished in September. That report that is in front of you highlights Mariachi Camarillo, which was very festive. It was in honor and celebration of National Hispanic Heritage Month. That event was one of those examples of a door-busting workshop event public series. It was awesome. Excuse me. We also had a local authors fair. We had lined the halls for the library there, and I would say that the facility team members were great help, making sure that things were accessible, that the space was fun. We had a great mixture of local authors who write both children's fiction and adult fiction, and that was a really great time, and we hope to continue that in the future as well. We also had our Talk Like a Pirate Day. So this event has become quite popular over the last few years. I know that my children in particular find it just fascinating for some reason to talk like a pirate for the entire day. And I won't question it. It's successful, and we have a great time with it, and brought another great crowd. And then I just wanted to take a moment to put in a nice pitch for this coming weekend. We have our 7th annual Star Wars Reads Day. Now, that's coming up, and it is very popular as well. We will have costumed characters. We will be very busy with children make and take activities. And there's even something for adults in the sense of trivia and other kind of contests to try to bring in all ages into the event.
Can you let people know what day that is?
That's going to be on Saturday.
Saturday the 12th?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
No,
13th?
13th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Any comments? Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a comment. It's before your time, but, and I know everybody has this, but the checked out items. Wow, am I reading this right? And I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but since 2011, some 4 million items have been checked out of this library. Am I right on that?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's a huge number.
It is.
And I know it's a long time, but that's a pretty heavy bar.
And remember, people told us before we built this that it was a waste of money because nobody was going to be reading books and nobody would go to a library within 10 years. And it's now 11.
And Kevin, all you have to do is look at the parking lot anytime, and you'll see a very active parking lot. So our library is being used.
I just wanted to bring that up, and I mean I don't know if it startled anybody else, but it certainly got my attention. It was, wow, yeah.
So, any other questions, comments? Thank you yes, Kevin, Tony.
A compliment, and that is the statistics now have the year-over-year numbers that I know. I don't know if my mic is on or not.
Press the button.
Hit the other one there.
Tap the microphone.
Sorry. Anyway, I wanted to give you a compliment because the year-over-year statistics which also led you to 4.6 million, Kevin, I think are enlightening. So I appreciate having that data. So thank you.
Wonderful. We're glad that that worked. Yes, I think looking at our data is going to inform us how to do our job more better. We see a big shift over to ebooks and things like that, and of course our events are ever popular.
Yes, they are.
Right, let's just look at trends.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Now go to departmental items. We have no departmental items and no other items under the council or comments from staff. Any comments from staff? Comments from board members? Seeing none, we'll adjourn.
All right, so we'll call this meeting of the Camarillo Sanitary District Board of Directors to order. The record will reflect that all 5 directors are present. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
No amendments to the agenda.
All right, any public comments? Hearing none and seeing no cards, we'll move to the consent calendar.
Move the approval. Second.
Okay, I think the tie went to the runner on that. I think the mayor had the motion and Director Morgan had the second. Everyone, please vote. And that's adopted on a 5-0 vote. No items departmentally. No items from legal counsel. Do we have any comments from staff? Comments from board members? All right, we're going to go, actually, we are going to recess this meeting because we are going to be going into one of our 2 study session items will be with respect to water and sewer rates. So we'll recess the Sanitary District Board meeting at this time.
Call the Camarillo City Council to order and ask the record to reflect that all council members are present. Are there any amendments to this agenda?
Madam Mayor, staff requests that we move item 9A, city manager, to up above city attorney due to county staff being present. That would be necessary for the item.
What are we going to do? I'm sorry. We're going to move that?
Yeah, I'd like to move 9A to just under item 7.
Okay. Any other requests?
Can I make a request?
Yes.
Yes. Could I please pull item H and item I?
H and I.
Yes.
And that H would go to Public Works and I would go to? Same, okay. H and I. Just a minute. Okay, Mrs. McDonald?
E and F, please.
E would go to Community Development?
And I would assume it'd be
H and
community
I.
development as well. Or F, I'm sorry.
F,
F is community development.
F is community development, E is public works.
Oops, I did that back.
And what was it again? E as in Earl?
E is in Earl, F as in Frank.
you gotta be, and I'm going to ask to have K pulled, and
What's
that would
that
go
night?
to Public Works, I believe.
Your Honor, I have just a question on one.
Just a second, we need to,
Okay.
I need to get all of this arranged as to where it's going to go, so we don't forget something. Let's start with E, and that goes to Public Works. And,
I have one for C, Your Honor.
oh, C
It's
goes
just a
where?
question.
Well, then, we're not there yet, we're just at amendments to the agenda.
That's, okay.
E is to Public Works. F is to Community Development. Help me, where's Community Development? Tell me the number, please.
C?
Community Development is what, Roman,
I'm sorry.
we don't have one
I thought
this
you were
time,
talking
do
to me.
okay. It's C, no? No, E, F. Okay, and then H goes to Public Works. I goes to Public Works. K goes to Public Works.
K?
K goes to Community Development, okay. Okay, I think I've got it all, so listen for what you called out. I have E, F, H, I, and K.
I'm going to try one more time for C.
Well, when we get to the consent calendar, you ask your question, but not while we're asking for
fine.
amendments. If you want to pull it completely,
just-
then now's the time.
I think I'll pull it because I need
Okay.
to know where this, what we're looking at.
Okay, so C will go to
Administrative
admin
services.
services.
C is in cat?
C is in Charlotte.
Oh, she is in Charlotte,
Charlie
of course. Where do you want to put that, Ms.
That's at administrative services.
Of 3? Okay.
Okay. So, are there any other changes, amendments to the agenda? Okay, we have presentations, none. Consent calendar with the exception of items C, E, F, H, I, and K. Is there a motion?
Why don't I go ahead and motion? I'll probably just do it in the reverse, Madam Mayor.
Okay,
The motion would be to adopt consent calendar items A, B, D, and J. I'm sorry,
G.
and J.
okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
So motion and a second, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Next is finance. Item A, transit occupancy tax ordinance amending section 3.16.070 of the Camarillo Municipal Code using the postmark date for forms and payments.
Yes, Mayor, members of the City Council. The item tonight is to consider amending the ordinance 3.16.070 of the California Municipal Code to use, of the Camarillo Municipal Code, to use the postmark dates for forms and payments for transient occupancy tax. Currently, the various hotel properties within the city make every effort to meet our tax deadline. As currently stated, we must receive the returns and the payments by the 15th of the month. However, due to postage delays, and in some cases, the accounting offices for some of these properties are on the East Coast. At times, they do attempt to put the payments in the mail in advance of that 15th, but because of postage delays or postal delays, we receive the payments late. We then have to impose penalties as per the municipal code. The penalties are a little significant, even if the return is maybe even a day late. It is pretty standard practice at various other agencies to refer to a postmark date. It would then allow the adequate time for the properties to complete and provide for payment to the city. It also allows city staff the best way and opportunity to conform to that deadline, or at least it's a little bit more fair with everyone out there. So the ordinance change is recommended, and I am available to answer any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Kildee?
Jeannie, my understanding, to get it postmarked that day, that it has to be at the post office by 3 o'clock. Is that about right? Does anybody else?
I'm not sure, because I know they do take mail until 5. I couldn't tell you honestly.
I'm just wondering if we want to put a disclaimer that it's got to be in by.
Well,
Is that, or
if
is
it's
that-
coming from different states, you don't know that might be the practice at this post
Oh,
office.
that's true. Yeah. So
Maybe it's up to them to find out when they're posted.
date specific, not time specific. Then.
Right.
Is that right? Okay.
Correct.
And that's kind of the general.
That's a pretty standard
Practice,
practice.
standard
And this
practice.
language is in reviewing other ordinances of other agencies. It's not uncommon to see postmark, because it does make it easier for the properties. It makes it also easier for staff.
So they just need to know that it definitely has to be postmarked by
Right.
that date.
Right.
So they got to get it in to make sure it gets
However they do
however
that.
they do it, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to clarify something.
Go ahead.
And it has to be the U.S. Post Office postmark, not postmarks off of machines and so forth that they use, correct? Because you can change
There-
those. I think that's the,
Yep.
that's the internal revenue side, is it has to be the postmark.
This,
Although
yeah.
They don't actually accept those anymore, it has to be certified, but anyway.
I would
Well,
think so.
there is this other question, and that is, we do have mail that's coming in by private carrier that wouldn't receive a U.S. Postal Service mark. And we discussed that internally, and I forgot what we came up with. but-
We decided that we would use the term postmark to receive those as well. And it is not uncommon to get those FedEx packages or other packages. And as long as it's postmark, we're willing to accept that, stamped of when it's received.
FedEx,
Stamped,
when they receive it.
right. Yes. I think it's just, it's fair and reasonable.
Okay, I have one question. I'm finding an inconsistency here because we're talking about postmark, and yet on page big 3, last line, next to the last word, it says mailed. And I think that should say postmarked, just to be consistent.
I have an answer on that, unless you do, Jeannie. Yeah. The reason we put mailed in there is because if you continue reading the sentence, it talks about the tax, because it says, at the time the return is mailed, the full amount of the tax due shall be remitted. So you're putting something in the mail, namely the payment on your tax. We already know that it's got to be postmarked as indicated by the 15th from the prior sentence.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
I think it's a
I
question.
think we have a first reading.
I'll request reading the title.
All right, this is Ordinance 1157, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Camarillo amending reporting and remitting requirements under Section 3.16.070 of Chapter 3.16 to the Camarillo Municipal Code regarding transient occupancy tax.
I'll second.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to approve. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. I think I'm going to look at the prerogative of the chair. We pulled a lot of things off of the consent calendar. I didn't have any cards on any of them. And the city manager had asked that we move something up to after community development. I think at this time it would be appropriate to move that up to ahead of public works. And so at this time, we'll go down to item 9, city manager, homeless emergency aid program, HEAP, funding shelter crisis resolution. Do you have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The continuum of care is slated to receive a one-time State of California Homeless Emergency Aid Program grant of approximately $4.8 million to address homelessness within this county. And the continuum of care is encouraging all Ventura County jurisdictions to adopt a shelter crisis resolution to ensure that all county residents are eligible to receive services funded by the HEAP grant. If a jurisdiction does not declare a shelter crisis, the COC will be unable to award funding to that jurisdiction or to any nonprofit within that jurisdiction, and programs that serve the entire county will be unable to provide rental subsidies or assistance with HEAP funding for any Camarillo-based homeless individual or family. Adoption of the declaration resolution before you does not require that the city provide homeless services or build a homeless shelter. Although staff is not intending that the city itself apply for these HEAP funds, it is recommended that the City Council adopt the required resolution so that the city's homeless service providers can apply for and be awarded these funds to better assist Camarillo-based homeless individuals and families. In 2018, the city and you can see this on the little chart that's provided in your staff report. The number of homeless expanded to 49 over the previous year's 27 in the most recent homeless count, which occurred on February 22nd. As used in the annual homeless count, homeless persons are those who are living in a place not meant for human habitation, or they are in an emergency shelter or transitional housing, or are exiting an institution where they temporarily resided. On September 4th, 2018, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in the case of Martin versus City of Boise that cities cannot prosecute homeless persons for sleeping on public property if no other shelter is available. In a recent case in the Ventura County Superior Court involving a homeless person inhabiting a public space in Camarillo, the public defender invoked the Martin case in a motion to have the case dismissed. However, the city attorney defeated the public defender's motion in part by presenting evidence that our homeless officer, homeless or HOPE officer, who deals on a daily basis with our homeless population, offered shelter to that homeless person, but the offer was refused. While the ruling is not precedent-setting, it demonstrates that having the greatest number of sheltering options available increases the city's ability to control unwanted camping in our public spaces. Adopting a resolution declaring a shelter crisis in Camarillo enables our HOPE officer to offer sheltering options funded by the HEAP grant, options the HOPE officer may not have without adoption of the resolution. The staff is available for questions. Also available is Tara Caruth from the COC, and she is also here to answer questions if needed.
Any questions?
I do, Your Honor.
Mrs. McDonald.
When I first read this, I think it's great. First of all, I have no problem with it. We need to have as much funds as we can to work on this issue. But what scared me about it is the fact that we are declaring this crisis and knowing some of the other laws and potential laws out there that requiring us to provide shelter, build shelters, and all of so forth and so on. Would we then be required to do one because it was called a crisis? And you say in here that it's not, but how do we know that? So if we adopt this, it's on the books, then next time they come up with one of their proposals, they being Sacramento, have we set ourselves up to be under whatever that new one is they come up with? And you see what my concern is?
Yes, I do.
You know, it's not just right this second, but what next? It's that what next part that kind of bothers me. Does it have to be called a crisis declaration?
Yes, unfortunately,
Has to be a crisis.
the resolution has some required language in it that's required by the state of California, and the language shelter crisis is part of that required language.
Yeah, what it says in the resolution isn't bad. It's just calling it a crisis.
I understand.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we can have discussion, or what are the wishes of the council?
Your Honor, I'll move that we adopt a resolution declaring a shelter crisis in Camarillo to allow homeless residents access to services provided by HEAP.
No, so I second that with a comment.
Okay.
We provide shelter in certain situations now, and it costs us money. This will help us offset that cost. And so, therefore, I don't think it's anything in the future, because in the future, if they show something like that in the bill, we just won't accept it next time. But right now, I think it helps offset our costs to keep the homeless sheltered during bad weather, especially. That's it.
Well, it's not exactly right.
Okay, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Now we go to Public Works, back to consent item E. Who pulled that one?
Let's see, hang on here. That might have been me. Let's see.
Okay,
No,
Mrs.
that's
McDonald.
And I warned,
Do you have a question, or would you like the whole staff report?
I don't need the whole staff report, but I did warn staff about this. In reading it, it referred to the fact that you needed to go to the city engineer's office to look at one thing, and then you looked at the community development to look at another set of plans, and it really didn't talk about much about the project at all. And to me, when we're approving something, I think there should be at least an overview of it. But also because this is such a long-awaited project for the community has a right to know a little bit more about it as well. So I just ask if they just give a quick overview about what we're talking about here and hit the water issue to also explain why they should be allowed to get a will serve letter.
Correct, thank you. A brief summary of the project of the Cracker Barrel CPD 247, which was conditionally approved by Planning Commission as the normal process for a CPD project on March 6th of 2018. Project location is at the west end of the promenade, premium outlets there at Las Posas and Ventura, with the empty pad space outlined in yellow is the proposed location for the Cracker Barrel. Quick overview, it is nearly a third of an acre, that outlined space there, and the picture shown there of the space looking into the project site for a restaurant and retail space of just over 9,000 square feet, and then also a 1,300 square foot covered porch. And that is the layout of the site improvements, and that is the item of approval before council tonight. As conditioned by the Planning Commission approval, the next step is improvement plans for relatively minor grading on this site because it's a pad that's already been established, parking, sidewalk, utility improvements, essentially what we call the improvement plans to then move forward with construction of the building. And so this step from council's approval of those plans, there's associated securities involved, agreements, and payment of fees to move forward with permits. So another slide showing the rendering, again, as presented to Planning Commission at their conditional approval step, showing the elevation, front elevation and side elevation of the proposed Cracker Barrel building. So status is they are obviously have completed plan check on these site improvement plans, and that's what's before you tonight for approval. There has been ongoing coordination and meetings with with Simon Group, the property area owner, and also Cracker Barrel, on they're preparing their architectural building plans for submittal, and we're expecting those to come in and be submitted in the near future. They don't have an exact date for start of construction yet. They are, if you will, breaking into the California scene for their establishments, and they are feeling some challenges of moving forward, moving through the California process, the building code requirements. So it's taken them a little bit of time to get to that point, but they intend to submit soon and move forward. And their total construction window for when that starts is what they're looking at, approximately 6 months from when they get started.
So this means it will happen. You never know till you know, I guess.
We don't know anything different.
One step
We don't know
closer.
anything different at this point.
And the water issue?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So the water issue is it was previously approved. The water allocation was a part of the entire 57 acres of the Camarillo Promenade LD 408 at that time. So the water availability is there, and hence the water will serve letter can be issued.
So it's not new service, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions?
No question, but so many people hit me everywhere about when is it coming? When is it coming? I can't wait to see this thing.
May take a while to get in.
What are the wishes of the council?
I'll move the approval.
Second.
Motion and a second, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Next item is item H from the consent calendar.
That would
How about
be
F?
mine.
Oh, we're going public
No,
works.
F is
Sorry, I'm sorry,
community
never mind,
development.
never mind,
We're
never
sticking
mind.
with
I was
public
going
works.
alphabetically.
H.
H.
That would be mine.
Okay, do you want the whole staff report, or do you have a question?
Yeah, if you could maybe just shed a little bit of light on this, Dave, maybe the history and, it's the cost allocation
Sure.
and how it's come to be.
Yes. So the need for this project was identified actually out of a request from the ranch staff and a need to improve an area that's dirt now that is used for parking. It's on the west side of the house of the ranch property, towards the main entrance, which is currently used as a parking area. Again, it's a dirt area, and the request being to pave that area and implement as many parking spaces as possible there. So it had been included in our capital improvement program, and we've moved forward with preliminary design alternatives. If you recall, we did hold a study session back in July of 2017 where the alternatives were presented to City Council for the various parking configurations and the resultant costs for those different types of alternatives. And the alternative that was recommended and given the nod by Council to move forward into final design was for 14 parking spaces along that west side of the ranch house, with half of that would be paved asphalt, the other half is going to be compacted road base, which is a suitable and stripeable surface for parking, associated curb, gutter, some sidewalk, and will provide accessible spaces there on the paving, and then also, like I said, seven other spaces, so 14 total parking spaces, along with lighting. So we did include 4 parking lot lights, essentially, that are going to be installed to the area needs lighting to have a safe area to pull in and park and back out and then leave. So lighting is included in this project as well. As far as originally, the real rough estimate for our planning purposes was about $200,000 is what we were expecting to pave this area. And so we went forward and completed design. Council gave authority to go out to bid, and we went out to bid towards the middle of this year, and then received the bids listed in the staff report with five bids there. The apparent low bidder, Civic Construction, opted to withdraw their bid during this process. So staff moved forward with vetting out and checking all the references and requirements of the second low bidder, United Construction and Landscape Incorporated, out of Northridge, California. And that's the recommendation tonight, is to award that contract to them for the $266,000. Somewhat higher than the original engineer's estimate. And a couple things come into play there. For this, it's a relatively small size project, a parking lot. The economies of scale to build a much larger parking lot, cost per space would come down quite a bit. To build 7 spaces in a relatively tight area, somewhat unique, bounded on all sides by existing improvements with the house, with landscaping. We're maintaining most all of the landscaping out there, working around it. In essence, it's a pretty specialized design to accommodate as many parking spaces out there with as little impact as possible. So just cost per space on this size of a project and unique project ends up being a little bit higher than normal. And then also the lighting. Again, and so actually over $100,000 of the 266 is for the lighting. We need to horizontally drill up to the house, actually, is where the electrical panels are. So it's some very specific construction items, techniques that we're specifying. So if you will, it's a pretty very prescriptive, constrained bid spec requirements that we have on this contract. So that drives costs a little bit higher for the contractor to meet all those requirements. And then we have the cost of the poles, the lights, and the specialized construction ends up increasing the cost a little bit more than what we had originally anticipated.
Let me just add, this has been on our list of things to do for several years. But I was out there one night at an event working because I'm one of the 2 city representatives to the ranch board. And at every event, that's part of the area where they park handicapped people. And I saw people in walkers, and the chuck holes are pretty bad because it's all gravel and dirt. And people with canes, and I was really afraid that somebody was going to trip and fall. And when it's wet, it's very slippery. So I think this is going to be a great addition. I've been very concerned about the handicap parking there. Mr. Morgan.
All right, asking staff, since we approved this last budget session, there's been no real changes. What we approved is what is reflected here. Is that true?
As far as the construction of what
Yes.
is going to be constructed, yes, there's no changes to what's
Okay,
going to be
thank you.
constructed.
But the cost went up.
No, I'm just talking about the construction and the project itself.
Project itself.
Itself only.
Okay. Mr. Kildee?
Dave, being as though that it is a public parking, can we identify who can park there and who can't? In other words, let's just say that there's docents there that are there before any crowd. They obviously can park there, but we typically can't preclude anybody else from the public if a stall is open to not park there. Is that correct?
I would believe so in that and again, I think the parking is mainly going to be managed by the ranch staff during events. I believe there's periods of time when those gates onto the ranch property are closed, so your general public won't be pulling in there and using the
But if
parking
there
spaces.
is
But-
a stall open, it wouldn't preclude them from being able to do that. Is that right?
Correct, as currently
I'm
planned.
assuming they close that gate when it's all full. I'm assuming that, when the parking is all full.
Yeah, that would essentially be up to the ranch staff, event management staff on how they. And I know they handle parking different ways for different events, depending on how big it is and how they're what they're using that space for. Some of the space further down in this area is often used for parking their support vehicles, trailers, or things that are bringing equipment, depending on what type of event it is.
And the question, too, do we have to identify any of those stalls as purely handicapped stalls?
No, there isn't a need to do that. There's sufficient handicap parking within the existing parking facilities at the ranch.
And I know that, I'm not suggesting this, but I know that the bids are pretty at a high now for any kind of construction. If, in fact, this was delayed, is there any guarantee that we might be able to get a better bid, or in your, professional opinion, that this is kind of where this is going to be for somewhat of the foreseeable future?
That would definitely lie in the realm of professional opinion and not a guarantee. The bidding climate right now is costs are high. We're seeing contractors are very very busy. And especially for small projects, it essentially comes at a premium to have a contractor even bid this type of project. And then the cost, we are seeing higher costs. So, and who knows what the future is going to hold. That's one of the most difficult things to predict is bidding climate for construction costs. I will say, as far as timing goes, it is, if the desires of the council are to move forward with this project at some point, now is the time to do it. We're awarding it now so that we can, the contractor can obtain the materials, especially the light poles. We've been coordinating very closely with the ranch staff. They've been very helpful in coordinating our project here, especially timing of construction, which in the staff report it does indicate construction will not begin until January after the high peak season of holiday events. So, and it's a pretty short window before wedding events start kicking in March, April. We've got a pretty short window to get in there, weather permitting, to get this work done. So, if there was any delay, we'd probably be looking at another year till that next off-peak season to do this construction appropriately with minimal impacts.
Thank you.
Mr. Tremblay?
So, Dave, a couple of questions. So, if I'm understanding it correctly, the estimated cost when we had the study session, 15 months ago?
Correct.
Was about $200,000, apples to apples, in terms of that was for this particular project as outlined.
Correct.
Right? And so now we're up to about $338,000 total project cost, according to the staff report. So how did we get, is that a function, you think, principally of the market and market forces relative to the bid, or is it from something else? Because it is a lot of money.
Right. Primarily, yes, a function of the bidding market right now, the climate. I will say that total 338 includes we've added a contingency, as we typically do, of 15%, and then also we have a materials testing and support services for this project also. So that original $200,000 was pretty much looking at construction only. The cost for that. So, we also had design services on this project also.
So I should have added to. The number given at that time would have brought it up to around 230, 240,
Right, and again,
240,000 roughly.
At that time, our estimates are exactly that, a pretty rough estimate.
That's net of any contingency.
Right.
Too.
Correct.
So so I guess thinking about this from an apples to apples standpoint, it's increased about 100,000, but that's net of the contingent costs.
That's contingent.
Correct.
Correct?
Right.
Next question is the low bid. That was a withdrawal by that bidder. What were the circumstances? Was it a bidder error, or was it a withdrawal?
We had an agreement with that bidder that the only statement that would be made about it would be that they agreed to withdraw their bid.
And let me go back to Kevin's, to Mr. Kildee's question from a few minutes ago. Is there any reason to believe, putting on this side of the shelf for the moment the value of having the project done, is there any reason to believe that we'd get more favorable bids, i.e. lower bids, if we waited for a year and rebid?
No, I would say there's not any reason to say that we would have a large chance of getting lower bids or not at this point. Yeah, I will emphasize again the one item at the onset of putting this project together where we know we're going to want to put parking lot lights on there. So again, a real rough part of that $200,000 estimate is some lighting. As I mentioned, as we got further into the requirements of where we need to hook up for this lighting, it's got to run right up underneath the landscape area, the sidewalk area, tie into the panels at the house. It's some significant specialized work there rather than open trench installation of conduit and light poles in a vacant property, if you will. Say Cracker Barrel, when they go install their parking lot and lighting, it's wide open, much easier and more cheaper construction to do that. So like I mentioned, the cost for electrical work is up over about $105,000 of that $266 is the electrical work, which again is required a separate licensed subcontractor for the electrical work. And then very prescriptive means and methods of construction, including the directional drilling. So those kinds of items are difficult to really refine the cost at the estimating point until it really gets out to final design and then even construction.
Right, and it's a small constrained site,
Correct.
so I understand that from a bidding standpoint.
Correct.
That concludes my questions. I assume we're going to have comments.
Yeah, are there any other questions? Mrs. McDonald.
I'm a little, I was surprised, and maybe when you add it all up, it doesn't sound as bad until you go and you take it apart and you realize that for 14 parking spots, that's $24,000 a piece. That's a heck of a lot of money for 14 parking spots. Would it be less expensive if we didn't add the concrete, if we did it all in the the ground agreement or whatever you call it?
Right, in the road base.
On the
Right,
road base
instead of the
instead of-
asphalt, I think is what you mentioned. So half of the parking lot will be asphalt, black asphalt paving, and then the rest will be the compacted.
Which one's more expensive?
So yes, the compacted road base would be cheaper, and then just what we end up with is let me put it this way: the asphalt paving is much easier to maintain that flat, accessible surface. While the road-based surface does work well, it is susceptible to rutting, and if somebody peels out in and out of there or something, there could be some maintenance needed in that area. On the asphalt, much less, almost no chance of that happening. So again, to accomplish the installation of a smooth, accessible parking and walking space for any ability of a driver, their mobility ability is the asphalt surface is what was recommended. And again, we had this conversation, if you recall, at the study session also, looking at the cost differential for that.
So the other parking lot on site is what? What's it made of?
It's about
Asphalt.
asphalt.
It's all asphalt. And does it have the same lighting as you're proposing here? So we would use the same one, the same
I
type?
believe it's similar.
Yeah, I'm not positive if it's exactly the same.
Aren't they providing the actual fixtures and we're providing the poles, if I remember right?
I'm not.
Because they wanted them to be exactly the same as the other ones that they had purchased.
That could be
The Ranch Foundation Board.
I would have to verify that and let council know.
I think that's it.
I guess one of the things that's bothering me, this is a ranch. The driveway is not paved. It's.
Oh, it is.
It's,
Driveway's
When you
paved.
drive in, it's paved.
You bet it is.
But I'm talking about around the house and
That's
it's a
paved.
ranch. To me, I don't know, it's a heck of a lot of money. I understand the safety side, and if there truly is an issue out there, it probably ought to go out and take care of the ruts and grade it even in the meantime. Originally, that wasn't used for regular parking for guests, and it slowly has become that. If you think about all we've gone through for the parking out there and the agreement we have with the office building next door to use for parking, and we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money on parking out there. So that's why I'm just having a little bit of problem with the cost going up even more than it already was. So really, you can't think of any way we could do it less expensive that would still serve a purpose and keep that ranch kind of atmosphere.
Not above what's already been analyzed and put forth to council for the decision to go forward with this design.
Any other questions?
Just a comment.
Okay, we'll open it up for comments.
The ranch is not what it was when Don Adolfo was there. There's no way you'd have that many people going there all the time and enjoying that ranch. It is actually a place for the public to come enjoy. So it's become an event area. There's a whole different strategy now than it was when Don Adolfo was there. I mean, the barns were down below, the stables were down below, it was dirt, everything was, we can't do that there now. Everything has your asphalt and things, and what we've been looking at in that area there, we've all agreed on it on our study session before. We agreed on this. Again, the lights will be similar, like you say, to the lights on the other side where there's parking. One thing I want to look at is when you come out of that parking lot, there's kind of it's a walkway, but it needs to be widened a little bit, especially if you're going to handicap come through there. I've experienced that, and so I know that we need to widen that when we do the parking lot, just enough for people with canes and things to walk. But I think we've already gone through this and went through this, and part of that 24,000 parking space is also including the lighting, which creates, what was 100 and how much thousand for added onto this? So a lot of that's not just your parking spot, but it's all the capital improvement things that have to be done to create the lighting. That's all, Your Honor.
I think we need a clarification because Mrs. McDonald's memory is a bit different than mine. She said the circular driveway is dirt. My memory was that it's paved.
It's paved.
Isn't it paved?
Yes.
Isn't it paved with?
On the interior of the
Yes.
site that goes
Yeah,
around the house
the circular
itself?
one that goes around the grass.
Again,
with
we
asphalt.
were just
When
out
I was there
we were just
last
out there for
week,
the
I
volunteer
didn't.
dinner, and
Guys,
I had heels on and I didn't
I believe
see.
it's paved.
Yeah, I'm there every truck thing. I'm there. It's paved
Okay, I just
All the
wanted
way
to.
around?
all the way
Yeah, all the way
around.
around.
And out the other gate and
Out the
everything?
other gate, paved all the way out.
Okay, then I was thinking the other side wasn't, sorry.
No.
I don't go out the other gate.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Any other comments? Mr. Tremblay, you said you had comments.
Well, gosh, Ms. McDonald, I calculated at 15 spaces, so I went wrong, but I had it at about 22,500 per space.
Mm-hmm.
But that would include the lighting.
I went to the 338, yeah.
Yeah, I went 338 divided by 15, so I took one more parking space.
Squeeze it in there.
There you go. I mean, to me, the question isn't the need or the attractiveness of undertaking the work. It's really the expense of the project over and above what I thought we had discussed in study session. The militating factors to me are that the ranch is a community treasure. And so spending money to ensure its viability for the public, I think, is money well spent. So that's one militating factor. The other are the safety issues, although I will say I think there is there's certainly disabled access or disabled parking access on the right by the barn area, and so I don't know that this area. I don't think, Madam Mayor, this area would be well. I don't know how it would be striped out, but I don't think it would be used for handicap access or disabled access parking because it's sufficient. So for me, it comes down to, is it worth this increased cost for doing this for the ranch? And so that's what I have been struggling with.
Let me explain how parking really happens when there's an event. And I'm not talking about when there's a board meeting with 15 people going, but when there's an event. Generally speaking, people who don't have a handicap placard or sticker or whatever hanger, well, first of all, one of the gates is closed, and there's a person standing there monitoring who comes in. There are 4 designated handicap spaces. And so the person who lets people in, I'm going to call him a guard, I don't think he's a guard, but let's call him
security.
The gatekeeper. The gatekeeper, if you have some kind of a designation as a handicapped person on your vehicle, you can park in there. The rest of the people must park either over on the, per our agreement, on the business condo side or along the street. If you're having an event that has, say, 200 or 300 people, there are going to be more than 4 people who have a handicap. So the 4 that have vans or whatever will get the handicap designated places first. The other people who might have a cane or a walker or something are put in all the other spaces. When the ones across from the barn and be at the end of the barn, at the east end, when that parking lot's filled, which isn't very big, by the way, then the people are put in here. But they often, how can I explain this delicately? Sometimes they're slow, and maybe that's why they got there last, and they're put down there. And it's really, if you go look at it, it's a difficult situation for people who are walking unsteadily.
So I've been lucky enough to have a personal experience as a gatekeeper.
Okay.
For example, when Camarillo Hospice was doing the chili cook-off. And I went through the same decision-making that you have to do. And I will say there were a number of people who, and we all look at this from our personal perspective, but there were a number of folks who were, I'll just say, mobility impaired, who had to park far away. And that made it made it more difficult on them, and that made an impression on me. So.
And I didn't mean to get my comments out before you, Mr. Kildee. I just was trying to respond to the question.
The reason why, I brought this up, I think, we're all on board, with the original potential cost of this, but then when it goes up exponentially like it is, I do think it's important to have a discussion here, that we don't just go out and just approve things without having a discussion, because it is a lot of money here. But I thought, well, maybe we could do something with the lighting there or something, but I don't think that's particularly possible. I do think we need lighting there. We are in an era where bids are coming in extremely high now, and the reason why I asked the question is, if we do wait, will we get a better rate? I think that's been answered here. I'll support this because I think there's extenuating circumstances on this, as far as, if we don't do this, that there potentially could be some issues. So I will be in, even though it's a lot more money than I thought it was going to be. I'll support as what's been.
Your Honor, just
Mr. Morgan.
comment. One of the reasons they're going up so high is you've got people waiting for builders to build in Santa Barbara and Ventura County because there's not enough. And that's why your costs are going up higher, because of that. That's one of the things. It won't end this year because all those homes cannot be redone this year.
Mrs. McDonald?
Well, I would agree with Mr. Kildee, and the reason that it caught my attention is that it had gone up so much. And Mr. Trimbley, I think that's probably why it caught your attention a little bit more. It wasn't the fact that we were saying, oh, suddenly we don't think the project's good. It's just when something goes up that much, I think it's right for us to question it, to make sure that what we were planning is the absolute right thing to do. If indeed it's a safety issue, then that's something that we do need to address. I think when the ranch first opened, if I'm remembering right, they didn't use that for regular parking. Now maybe events have expanded and there's more people, and now they do use it. So if indeed it is being used for that, it needs to be in safe and good repair. Because the last thing we need is for some of them fall down. So for that reason, even though the price is going up, and I always say that these are the kind I groan at when I vote yes, because it costs more than what we really wanted it to. But if it's something that has to be done from a safety standpoint, then so be it.
Are you going to make a motion with a groan?
With a groan, yeah, I can do that.
I move that we approve the staff's recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll groan my second.
Okay, and I just want to remind everybody that there have been many times when the construction industry has been really hungry, and we
Got good deals.
had very little discussion
Anymore.
when we saved, in one case, $1 million, and in many cases, hundreds of thousands.
Then we do our votes with cheers.
Okay, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. We have 5 minutes. The next item is holiday decoration. Let me just ask who made this.
I did.
Do you think it'll be a long discussion?
No, I think we can do it in 5 minutes. I just have some questions for Dave. It did get my attention that this is some $200,000, and I thought maybe if you could shed a little bit more information on the cost and the reasons why it is such.
Sure, to be happy to. And that is total contract amount of over 3 years of $203,800, including some contingency built into that. So first year on the bid amount of $106,000 includes purchasing. The city will purchase and own all new holiday decorations that are used here at City Hall, on the pavilion in Constitution Park, and on Ventura Boulevard. The existing decorations have been in use probably more than 10 years, maybe close to 15. They've been limping along, especially the garland with the lights intertwined. Takes considerable amount of effort every year to make repairs. It really needs to be replaced. Along with moving into a multi-year contract at this point, going out to bid with an RFP and seeking bids for this, was the time to then establish the purchase of new decorations, and that's why the higher cost for the first year, and then the lower cost for each subsequent year, where the contractor will take down and store and then reinstall each holiday season.
And this, Dave, these are high quality enough to where they should last several years if they're taken care of appropriately.
Yes.
Are they LED lighting?
Yes. Right. Yes.
And we have used this. I mean, you have confidence that this company can handle this contract, if you will.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? What are the wishes of the council?
Move the approval.
Is there a second? It's going to die for lack of a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. It's 5:58. We will now, we have study sessions, but we also have the possibility of a closed session. Could the attorney please read us the conditions under which we would go to closed session? And
Yes, we have 2 closed sessions. One is a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. The number of potential cases is 1. We also have a conference with real property negotiator. The authority is Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is the former fire station. The agency negotiators are listed in the agenda, as are the negotiating parties, with being St. Mary Magdalene School. Under negotiation are price and terms of payment.
okay, we're going to go into study session first. No?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we will. There are 2 study sessions this evening.
Right.
We will handle one in the current study session for sure, and then we will need to go into closed session during our our interim period. If there's time after the closed session, we'll return back to study session. If there's not, then that final study session will happen after the 7:30 session.
Okay, so we will recess to a closed session. Call this meeting of the Camarillo City Council back to order and ask the record to reflect that all council members are present. Next is the flag salute. Mrs. McDonald, would you lead us in the flag salute, please?
Rise and join us. With your right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any amendments to this agenda?
No amendments, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Next on the agenda is public comments. I have several cards. If anyone in the audience would like to make a comment on an item that is not on the agenda, please fill out a blue card and hand it to the city clerk, and I'll take the cards in the order I receive them. First is Todd, I believe it's Schumann. If I pronounced it wrong, please tell me. I'm sorry. Oh, wait a minute.
Actually, there's others who put in cards before me, but
I'm taking them in the order I received.
That's fine. That's fine. My name's Todd Schumann. I live here in Camarillo, 2260 Camellar Drive. Others will be following me addressing this topic. I request the City Council put onto the agenda for the next meeting, which I believe is October 23rd, a reconsideration of the default setting that you have selected for residential households concerning renewable energy portfolios as part of the Clean Power Alliance. My understanding is established a very low, the 36% default renewable energy setting. I request you consider at least upping it to a 50% portfolio standard, and I actually urge you to consider actually a 100% renewable energy default setting as well. As others will say, no one is locked into these settings. Even if you set it at 100, if they wanted to pay less, and they wanted to have more of their energy come from coal or whatever, they could just fill out a card and send it to the city, and then they would go down to a lower setting. But given the report that came out yesterday from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which has really recommended government bodies and other bodies to really accelerate their efforts to promote renewable energy and get us on closer to moving toward a decarbonized economy, this would be one step that the city of Camarillo could take to move us in that direction. So I will let others follow. You'll be, but in any case, thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Ellison.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city staff. I'm Michelle Ellison, a resident of Ojai, and represent Ojai on the Clean Power Alliance board. I'm here this evening, like Todd, to urge you to reconsider your previous renewable energy default selection and change it to 100%. While the 50% option would certainly be better than the 36%, both are a long way from 100 and may mean more polluting emissions. There are 3 weeks left to change your selection before the October 31st deadline. Setting the default at 100% is one of the most immediate, tangible, and significant ways to drastically cut emissions. It will take Camarillo much more time, effort, and expense to achieve this kind of progress otherwise. Defaults have immense power to affect social outcomes. Research shows that the choice of a default may turn out to be the most significant decision a private or public institution makes. By setting the default at 100%, you will get much more participation at that level than if you set it at a lower tier. Most customers will remain at 100%. Likewise, if you set the default at a lower tier, like 36 or 50%, that's mostly what you'll get. Despite our best intentions, few of us would opt up, often just because of inertia or the busyness of life. Industry studies reveal there's overwhelming public support for renewable energy, and people are willing to pay more for it. I've heard from a number of council members in CPA cities that with elections coming up, supporting clean energy is politically popular. Customers want cleaner energy, and they want it now. California passed legislation which targets 100% clean energy by 2045. Now consider this. The 100% default gives cities an opportunity to achieve that goal 25 years ahead of schedule. Simply by setting the default at 100%, communities like yours could be powered by close to that amount as early as the middle of next year when service begins. The projected cost difference for the 100% option is 7 to 9% more than Edison's base rate, but the new renewable content is 66% more. That's a very compelling return and a small price to pay for long-term benefits. While there's a slight rate savings of 0 to 2% in the lower two tiers, they have far less renewable content, so we must consider the cost of externalities like more polluting emissions. The perception of saving $1 or $2 in the short term is a dangerous illusion. And what's noteworthy is there's a provision allowing low-income customers to participate in the 100% plan at no additional cost in those jurisdictions with 100% default. The default isn't a rate hike, it isn't a mandate, it's not forcing anything on anyone, it's simply making a suggestion. Customers have the freedom and ability to choose another plan according to their own priorities. Why would you want to suggest anything other than 100% clean energy for Camarillo? In closing, this is likely one of the biggest impact decisions you will make for your community. Renewable energy is now readily available and affordable. All we need to do is start choosing it. It'd be fantastic to have Camarillo join the other member agencies doing 100% and help lead the way to a cleaner, healthier, and more sustainable tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Tiffany Lewis.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing us this evening. I'm here also to speak on behalf of raising the default to 100% for community choice energy. My name again is Tiffany Lewis. I'm a resident of Camarillo. I'm also a member of the Climate Reality Leadership Corp, which was founded by Al Gore. Globally, we are dumping 110 million tons of pollution into the atmosphere every 24 hours. And almost every nation in the world now agrees what scientists have been saying for decades, that we have to stop doing the destruction to this planet that we have. Sorry. Especially changing where our energy is coming from. Energy sources that we're currently using are causing a lot of the issues that we're seeing with climate change. I would bet that everyone here knows at least someone who has been impacted by the wildfires. A total of 6,906 fires have burned through Ventura County just this year, destroying over 1.5 million acres of land, leaving people displaced and homeless. That's in our county alone, just in 2018. Fires are not the only impact of climate change. Heat itself is a danger to our community. This winter, Camarillo had 3 of the highest heat days in all of the nation. This winter, it was hottest here. Also this summer, everyone knows how hot it was. We had many days over 100 degrees. Most of our community members here are suffering in the heat. As we know, 20% of our population here are senior citizens, and about 7% are children, the ages 5 and under. These populations are extremely susceptible to heat illness. With heat comes other issues, disease, issues with nutrient density with our foods, destruction of ecosystems, and many more things. So my question is, what are we, Camarillo residents and our council, going to do about it? We have to do something. We have to show the leadership that our communities are looking for. Raising the default to 100% will show that leadership and will show that we are good stewards of this planet that we live on, and leave a planet that we want to leave for our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come. I will be choosing 100% regardless of the choice, but I do hope that that will be a default and show our leadership to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Young.
Good evening. My name is Chris Young. I actually live in the unincorporated area outside of Ojai, and I greatly appreciate this opportunity to speak to you specifically, as these most recent others have, on the Clean Power Alliance and the renewable energy default. I too hope that you will consider reconsidering and move to the 100% for all the reasons and what appears to many of us to be really no downsides to the 100%. Timing certainly is with us here tonight in terms of looking at the news in early this week from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And as I'm sure each of you knows well, that report made quite clear that the window of opportunity that many were thinking was a little bit wider window obviously has closed considerably based on the science, and we don't have a lot of time to work with this. I'm going to guess that you, like probably most every city council around America, is a profound supporter of scouting. As we know, in scouting, one of the tenets is that one is to expect the best and prepare for the worst. Obviously, as adults, we have a responsibility to function in that same manner ourselves to ensure the safety of our families and our children. So it's my hope that you all will reconsider this and make easily accessible to the citizens of Camarillo a 100% renewable default. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Matthew Lorimer.
Good evening, City Council. You know, I've been coming to council meetings for over 10 years. A public servant should have public trust as officials. You know, I came a few weeks ago, and there was a debate. Ms. McDonald had literature. It didn't define who it was from. I guess it was distributed at the Republican Women's event. Also, the City Council saw it before that. You know, you signed a thing, Code of Fair Campaign Practices, decency, honesty, fair play. I shall conduct my campaign openly and publicly. That's not what's being done, okay? We have a measure, M&E, and then we got people opposing. Ms. McDonald, Craven, and then Kevin. Now, Kevin, there's signs out in the community that says against M&E. I called the city clerk, and those are your signs, but there's no identification on them. You know that? So we're running a secretive campaign. It's disrespectful, okay? There's policies, we're not following them. The next thing I want to talk about, Mr. Morgan. You know, I was down there campaigning on Measure M. He comes down there and starts making accusations, and then he says he's going to get the boys code enforcement, okay? In front You have a policy, a fraud policy, 2013. It says, fraud, for the purpose of this policy, fraud is the act of intentional deception for personal gain. Using one position within the city to gain advantage when conducting personal business with the city. You know something, 2 years ago I talked about how somebody went to ARCO and they said they were a code inspector, not one investigation. Mr. City Attorney, I'm asking within 10 days, I want an investigation on Mr. Morgan for going around. Okay, there's Pizza Hut, there's a lot of things on the internet about going over there, basically, and telling people, oh, well, you know, why do you have those signs up there? You know, I'm the mayor. I'm with the police department, or whatever he's going to say. But the bottom line is, he shouldn't be going around. I want to know how many times he's gone to code enforcement. I want to know how many phone calls, how many emails, okay? Because it seems like he's going around doing that. Okay? And then at the expo, he's yelling out the window at me that I'm breaking the rules. He's going to call the boys in code enforcement. You know, you guys are the city. You know, you think that's respectful? I don't. Ms. Craven, you're the mayor. Last time, 2 weeks ago, he said a nasty thing to me when I was walking off the stage. None of you said anything. It's on the air. There is no respect for the city council anywhere in Ventura County. There's constantly issues with it. It's outrageous. But the idea that a councilman is going around harassing people because he doesn't have his sign up there is unacceptable. All right? And I don't appreciate him going down to when I'm at the farmer's market making an accusation, say he's going to get the boys in code enforcement. I don't appreciate it. I want an investigation. I don't think it should be done in the city. We need an outside investigation so we have something clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel.
Can I make a comment on?
Certainly.
I just want to make a comment. The individual is correct. I did have some signs out that were not properly identified. The reason is there's been another determination that's been brought to my attention. I have rectified that. To my knowledge, there's no signs out that are not properly identified.
Daniel Goldberg.
Good evening, City Council and staff. My name is Daniel Goldberg, and I am a candidate for Camarillo City Council. Last week, the Acorn reported on my idea to bring free Wi-Fi to the Old Town District of Camarillo. It was met with mixed reviews. Some residents liked it, others didn't see the value. The important question, though, how much is it going to cost? I do believe that this is an important question. I've reached out to Frontier and Spectrum to get ballpark figures. They have not gotten back to me. Now, there's no guarantee that I will win this election. If that's what happens, I hope that this City Council and staff will take the idea and run with it. Providing free Wi-Fi to visitors of Old Town is a guaranteed win. Yes, there will be an initial investment, but the future economic potential is unlimited. We need to invest in new technology into our city. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think he had a point, and just listen.
I think he's got a good idea.
Okay. Pat Brown.
Good evening, Council. It's good to see your faces again. I'm glad you've probably seen mine, not recently, but it's good to see you again. I want to speak on the Clean Power Alliance and how important this is. You've already heard from some very smart people who have put together that we need to go and change it to the 100%. I won't reiterate what they've said, but I want to call out what I've done. I have set my goals, my personal goals, were to be energy sufficient with photovoltaics, with an electric car, with rainwater capture, with being the first garden in Camarillo to be certified by Surfrider as an ocean-friendly garden. I also, from the permit department, seem to have the largest number of permits with all of the stuff above board. I think I'm at 16 at this point. I set my goals to be 100% 15 years ago. I'm now at that point, and I can now help other people do the same thing. All of you need to set the 100% as well, because if you don't set the 100%, then you don't have a goal. It's not effective, and it won't get done. As a project manager, if you don't set the goals, it doesn't get done. But you can always default down if you have to, but you can't default up, and it's really too late. We must start now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all the cards I have. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to us on an item that's not on the agenda? Okay, well, move on to public hearings. The first public hearing is a tentative tract map, 5969 Camarillo Village Homes LLC. Resolution approving a one-year time extension continued from September 26th. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Craven. Michelle Gluckert-Deanna will be presenting this item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Craven and members of the City Council. The subject property is located northeast of the intersection of Lewis Road and Pleasant Valley Road. On August 24th of 2016, your City Council approved tentative tract map 5969 in conjunction with Residential Plan Development RPD 196 and Conditional Use Permit CUP 369. Tentative tract 5969 was approved for a subdivision of the 23-acre site into two parcels, Lot 1 and Lot 2, and further subdivision of Lot 1 into 285 for-sale airspace condominium units. RPD 196 was approved on Lot 1 for 285 for-sale townhomes. CUP 369 was approved on Lot 2 for a mixed-use building consisting of 24 rental apartments over 12,000 square feet of commercial space. Camarillo Village Homes is requesting a one-year time extension for the tentative map. They did not provide a specific reason for the time extension on their application. However, staff is aware that they are currently in escrow to transfer a portion of their project, that is Lot 1, to another developer. No changes to the tentative tract map or to the conditions of approval are proposed, and therefore no new significant environmental impacts exist that were not previously analyzed under the EIR that was certified for tentative tract 5969 in conjunction with RPD 196 and CUP 369. For the record, a letter from Martin Teitelbaum, dated October 9th of 2018, was submitted to staff today, requesting that your council deny the time extension. A copy of this letter has been distributed to all council members and was also provided to the property owner. As stated in the agenda report, staff recommends that your council adopt a resolution approving a one-year time extension from August 24th, 2018 to August 24th, 2019 for tentative tract map 5969, subject to all previously approved conditions of approval. This concludes staff's presentation. Brandon Mann of Camarillo Village Homes is here and available to speak tonight.
Are there any questions of staff?
Not yet.
No questions of staff. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have the card from Brandon Mann. Brandon. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing. And now Brandon Mann.
Thank you, Camarillo City Council. Thank you for considering the extension. As Michelle had mentioned, Martin had submitted a letter regarding bugs from the property, and I talked to Martin today, a few hours ago, as soon as we received it. We have reached an understanding, and I will be proactive in the future, probably come once a week or once a month, and make sure during this extension that there is no overgrowth. I think there was an incident a few months prior where we had to come and remediate the property, and we were told that would last for longer than it has. So we're just going to be more proactive this time and make sure it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Any questions of Brandon?
Brandon.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm glad you worked out something with the property guy. Would that remediation be called plowing the whole field so that it takes everything under?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to us? I have no other cards. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public hearing.
Comments?
And ask for council discussion, motion.
May I ask a question, I guess, of staff and
whoever on staff would answer, and it might be the city attorney. The letter that we got, it basically asked that we add language to the conditions to make sure that they didn't have the issue that they had before. Everything from making sure they do what was said earlier to building an 8-foot masonry wall. With the letter that we received and the verbal commitment that we just heard from Mr. Mann, where does that put the city, and how much can we rely on the fact that this is no longer an issue if we haven't heard from the property manager of the other part?
Well, the answer to your question is you do not have to act on this matter tonight. If you wanted, you could put this over, for example, to get verification from Mr. Teitelbaum that he is satisfied with his discussions with Mr. Mann. You could continue the public hearing to October 24th to allow Mr. Teitelbaum to confirm that information, and that would not affect the status of the application because the map remains valid until you take action on the request. So there's not like you're looking at a deadline that you have to do this tonight. And so I guess that's the best answer I can give you is if you're looking for confirmation from Mr. Teitelbaum himself beyond what you heard from Mr. Mann this evening, I assume Mr. Teitelbaum's not in the not in the chambers. You would need to put this over to give him that opportunity for input.
And then one more, if I might, of the city attorney. If we were to extend it, can we indeed add additional conditions?
Well, the answer is yes, with the developer's consent. Specifically, Camarillo Municipal Code Section 18.10.160D, like dog, it reads, as a condition of the extension of a tentative subdivision map, the City Council may recommend new conditions or revise existing conditions on the approved tentative map as recommended by the Planning and Community Development, or as it may find necessary, provided that the developer agrees to these conditions or revisions. So if the developer agrees to those conditions, then the answer is yes.
And if they didn't agree, then you'd have the option of not approving the extension or approving it with the conditions it had. We would have that choice.
Yes.
Okay.
We could approve it without the developers.
You could no, let me.
You answered yes. That's why I'm.
I did answer yes because that was the proper answer to the question. But let me elaborate on my answer. The answer is this: that you can approve the extension tonight as it's been recommended by staff. You could. That's one option. Another option is you continue the matter to October 24th to allow Mr. Teitelbaum to confirm that he's satisfied with his conversations with Mr. Mann. Another option is that you approve the resolution tonight, adding a condition, which you could either tell us what the condition is now, if you're prepared to do that, and we can put that in the resolution, and we can have the resolution signed up tomorrow, or you can direct staff to revise the resolution with whatever adding condition you wish, and we bring it back to you on October 24th. If you add a condition, you need the consent of the developer.
So her question was, if the developer doesn't give his consent, then we can bring it back and approve it anyway. And I gather your answer to that question was really no.
No, I think she said
we could approve it anyway.
The old way or the new way.
Oh, I thought you meant.
No. He got what I meant, but
okay,
sorry.
I didn't. I'm sorry.
I thought I understood the question.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you clarified. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr.
So, just to make sure that I understand.
Right.
And the question is to the city attorney. So if I understand it correctly, the city's municipal code, number 1, provides for extensions. Is that correct?
Yes.
And number 2, it provides for the council in its discretion to add conditions on the extension. But, well, let's leave it at that. You can add conditions on the extension.
You can if the developer agrees.
And I was just about ready to ask that. Okay. But the developer has to agree to those conditions?
Yes.
Okay.
No other questions of the city?
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Kildee?
Kind of a question of the attorney. If hypothetically we do extend this to the October 24th.
August, I believe.
Or, yeah.
October.
Didn't I say October 24th? I thought anyhow.
Did I miss here? Where's Michelle Dunn? Is it August?
I said
20?
October.
October.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
See, we all get confused.
Yeah, he got caught.
I thought you were talking about the extension date on the map.
The question is that a reasonable amount of time for the applicant to respond to perhaps a new condition?
Depends.
Well, we could ask him.
Okay, that would be fair.
Could you come up and,
And I guess it depends on what condition you're.
I think it depends on which condition, so.
I believe it would depend on which condition. As it currently stands, I believe this extension was from August 24th from 2018 to August 4th of 2019. I believe we're already in October, so we technically already are 2 months behind the 1-year extension. So as long as, the council accepts my conversation with Martin and there's a way to do that without adding conditions, I would appreciate it. However, if you so decide to add condition, I believe we would need to, or I would need to figure out if that's acceptable. I just need some time to think about it.
Do you think the 2 weeks, if it's a reasonable amount, would that be a reasonable amount of time that you should be able to come together on something?
We would like to have it up for consideration as soon as possible, preferably tonight if that is acceptable.
I have a question.
Mr. Tremblay.
But as a matter of law, the question to the city attorney, if for some reason it went past October 24, that does not legally impact the status of the application, correct?
Correct. It's pending until you make a decision.
Okay. So
and the
And does it go 1 year from when we make the decision or from when it ran out?
1 year from it would start August 24th of 2018, so it would be until August 24th of 2019, whenever you make that decision.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're hearing tonight, this is just a routine, normal forward for a year, but we heard from a gentleman next door to you that was complaining. And I think that's one of the things that we have to deal with primarily as an extra condition. And that would be how you're going to make him happy. Would they be plowing the grounds? Would they be doing whatever? But in my opinion, that's what we're really looking at, the extra condition, and making sure the neighbors are happy with them.
We're taking comments.
Can I just provide an additional point of clarification? That in regards to the 3 requests in the letter from Mr. Teitelbaum, one was for a wall.
Yes.
And the only reasonable location to build a wall, if that was a condition, would be on Teitelbaum's property, because we don't know what the finished grades would be on the subject property where the tentative track map is. So if there's direction to work towards achieving that recommended item, it would take cooperation from the property owner, Mr. Teitelbaum, to put that wall on their property.
It seems to me that he wanted this done before any construction began. Is that, did I read that correctly?
That's what I read. The only other challenge is that if this site is raised and that wall is constructed, even if it is on their property, then they may have to do a double wall with the retaining wall on the Brandon Mann project site.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Did he, in the conversation with you, and I call it a settlement with you, saying what makes him happy, did he say he has to have a wall, or are the other mitigation things we talked about, the plowing and so on? What did you come up with?
In the conversation I had with Mr. Teitelbaum, and hope I'm not butchering the name, we reached an agreement, as far as I'm concerned, that as long as I'm diligent in making sure that this does not arise again, or at least come and look at the property on a frequent basis to make sure this doesn't happen again, then he's satisfied and didn't want to add any further conditions.
Okay, that's where we are.
My word.
But I ask if Mr. Teitelbaum is here. Nobody has left. We can reopen the public hearing if he'd like to speak.
No, he's not here. He indicated that he wasn't available to attend. And on that point, I do think it's important for staff to have a conversation with Mr. Teitelbaum also. I believe what Mr. Mann is saying to be correct and accurate, but I think since the letter was directed to staff, it'd be appropriate for us to also have a follow-up discussion with him if that's the direction from the City Council.
Good.
Okay, Mr. Tremblay, I think you were indicating you had comments?
So you want me to start?
Sure.
Perhaps before we get to comments, just based on what I've heard so far from the legal point of view, one option that's available, because I was kind of covering those previously, and from the discussion that we've had so far, would be to continue this hearing to October 24th, to allow staff to converse with Mr. Teitelbaum, if necessary, to revise the resolution to include some language with regards to the maintenance of the property, to coordinate that with the developer to make sure the developer is in agreement to that, because that's what your code requires. And then that conversation is going to have to happen at least by the Friday before October 24th, because that resolution in your agenda pack, and maybe even by the Thursday before October 24th. So that's the timing on all of this.
Mr. Tremblay, we'll try again.
Mr. Mann wants to...
Oh, I'm sorry.
One more question. I understand that, the next hearing would be, at the end of this month. However, will be October 24th, which is 2 months past a 1-year extension. So our 1-year extension would become 10 months. Is there any way, I don't know if it's a legal question, to make sure that the extension goes to October 24th?
No, there's not.
No problem. Thank you.
Mr. Tremblay?
Well, I wasn't on the council at the time this tentative tract map was approved. And I appreciate the city attorney's answers. I have some concerns about the project, but given the previous approval by a prior council and the developer seeking an extension, I also think, though, that they need to make meaningful progress on their project soon. And that was one of the items that was addressed in Mr. Teitelbaum's letter. The conditions articulated by Mr. Teitelbaum, and I respect what Mr. Mann had to say, but I also agree with Mr. Vaca that a conversation with Mr. Teitelbaum is entirely appropriate at this point. So I think I would ask, within the confines of what Mr. Pierik has articulated, which is to continue this to October 24, and city staff work with the developer between now and the next meeting to fashion conditions that would be mutually acceptable to both the developer and Mr. Teitelbaum and the city. And I'm specifically referring to the 3 conditions that are laid out in Mr. Teitelbaum's letter of today. So those would be my comments. The municipal code provides for extensions. I get that.
I understand that. I'm just looking for
okay.
Next person to make comments. Everybody's writing. Nobody wants to.
I'm ready to make a move.
Okay, Mr.
I would agree with Mr. Tremblay on that, to extend this on to the October 24th and see if we can get some movement on some of these.
Mr. Morgan.
I'm ready to make a motion, Your Honor.
You don't want to make any comments?
No, I already made my comment that
Okay,
if
but
we
Mrs.
bring that back next time and show that what he's saying is
Mrs.
true.
McDonald, would you like to make a
I
comment?
would. While this project was approved by the City Council, I did not vote for it. So I agree with you. I have some real concerns about this project, always have, and so I look at it from that lens. But as far as what's before us tonight, I do believe that we need more information. Staff needs to have a chance to work through this and bring it back. The municipal code does allow for an extension, so that's something that we obviously need to deal with. But it needs to come, in my opinion, needs to come back with some closure, some I'm going to say some concrete answers to those questions and I would like to hear on all three of the proposals that the adjoining property owner suggested. Or maybe they can come up with something else between them that works for both sides.
Mr. Morgan.
I would say the same thing. I'm ready to continue this thing till the 24th, and go ask what they've come up with is true, a good answer that will solve this problem, and move forward. And I make that motion.
Is there a second?
You don't want to talk?
I'll say something before I call for the vote, but it's very brief.
So this is
There's
to
no
bring it
second is going to die for lack of a second?
And then we don't have an extension?
You better be careful not.
Why?
not gonna
Getting into, I'd have to talk to city
We're
attorney
looking for a
about that.
second to his motion.
Excuse me, I need an answer to
This to
that one.
continue to the next hearing.
That's the motion on the floor, but you don't have a second. May I ask the city attorney a question?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan just made the comment that we better be careful if we don't approve an extension. And he said he talked to you. What does that mean?
I didn't say that at all. I didn't say I talked to him. I have not talked to him.
Who did you
Excuse me. I would like to ask, is there anybody interested in seconding this? This extension?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you. You both indicated you were willing to. And after the motion, I asked 3 times
Yeah, I know.
if there was a second. Yes.
As a matter of process, I am not certain what the motion is.
Okay.
No disrespect to you, Mr. Morgan, but I don't understand what your motion was.
Would you please state
So
the
could you restate it specifically so that I can
This is
understand?
to refer this on to the 26th for further consideration by our staff in meeting with Mr. Teitelbaum to see if there has been a agreement on how to handle this.
I believe it's the 24th, isn't it?
The
24th, I'm
24th.
not sure. 24th.
The next meeting. Okay, Mr. Tremblay.
Okay, right, October 24, but I'm not clear, Mr. Morgan, on whether your motion includes specificity with regard to the 3 items laid out in Mr. Teitelbaum's letter, and I need to know whether your motion includes.
The reason I didn't put that in there is because he indicated they had already talked, and if he maintains the property, he doesn't require that wall. And that wall would, like our own staff said, would really have a problem when it comes time to develop the property.
So I'm hearing you say the answer is no. Your motion does not include that.
Include what, the wall?
The 3 conditions, the meeting with staff and the developer. Give me just a second. The staff and the developer and the adjacent property owner as to the 3 conditions in this letter that we've been presented with.
Meeting with them or just hearing from each
Attempting
of them?
to achieve agreement.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
mutually acceptable.
That's right.
That's mutually acceptable to the developer and to Mr. Teitelbaum and to the city.
Right, but we not tell them they have to have those 3 right up front. It's mutually acceptable, and they come back and make a recommendation. In other words, if he's saying what he's saying is true, that Mr. Teitelbaum does not need a wall, then if they come back and tell us that, because it'll cause a problem later, as you heard. And if Mr. Teitelbaum doesn't need a wall, but all the other mitigations, then I think that's where we should go. But that's what staff's supposed to recommend or find out.
Well, if I can just clarify, I didn't say necessarily a wall is going to cause any problems. It's just that there may be considerations that we'd have to look at. So they can do a wall on Teitelbaum's property. Then any future wall may need to be a retaining wall on their project site adjacent to the Teitelbaum property line wall.
My response.
So just for clarification.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vaca, to interrupt. Mr. Morgan, I was just merely attempting to make sure I understood that your motion included those 3 components.
For consideration. Because he'll come back and tell us what if he says.
I think we've had enough discussion, and I think, Mr. Morgan, that your motion did not get a second. Is there another motion to be made?
Didn't Kevin give me a second?
I'm going to withdraw that without those.
I didn't hear your second.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there another motion to be made?
Well, and if this is going to die because
Mr. Tremblay,
of
are you getting ready to make a motion?
You want me to?
Go ahead.
I'll
Tigos
move
to the
that
runner.
we extend this to the October 24th with the 3 conditions that were brought to our attention. by the letter from Mr. Teitelbaum, and the sides will get together with staff and try to rectify these conditions vis-a-vis the letter from Teitelbaum.
You said with the 3 conditions, so you're wanting them added in, or you're wanting staff
Or
to
consider.
to find out if there is an agreement of some kind, or to, I'm not sure exactly what it is you're
That
asking.
the 3 issues that, in the letter that we received, are addressed by
Okay.
staff.
Okay.
Okay, but not necessarily included until staff has discussions with Mr.
Right.
Teitelbaum and Mr. Mann.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I want to make sure everybody understands that if we do add 3 conditions or if we don't, there are still 200 exactly conditions on this property. And so it isn't just at the last minute we decide to add a condition or 2.
And if I might, this condition, if it's added, is because of the condition the property's been kept in while it's been in this, whatever, holding pattern. So it doesn't have to do with the actual building of the
Question,
project.
has staff and building and safety and code enforcement received previously complaints about these bugs?
Yes, and we've dealt with it appropriately through our code compliance procedures.
Okay, I hadn't heard of them. Okay, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Next item is a introduction of an ordinance amending section 19.44.930 residential uses of chapter 19.44 off-street parking of Title 19 zoning of the Camarillo Municipal Code. Could we have the staff report on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Craven. Jackie Lee will be presenting this item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Craven and council members. The item before you is an ordinance to reinstate previously adopted parking requirements for new residential multifamily ownership projects containing units with 4 or more bedrooms. In April of 2015, the Planning Commission Ordinance Committee reviewed and supported an ordinance amendment to require all townhouse, condominium, or other multifamily ownership projects containing units with 4 bedrooms or more to provide 2 enclosed spaces per unit, plus 1 space for the parking of a recreational vehicle for every 5 units, plus 2 open parking spaces in front of garages or as dedicated parking stalls on site for each unit, and 3 open guest spaces for every 5 units. In May of 2015, the Planning Commission reviewed and recommended the City Council approve the ordinance amendment, and on June 24th of 2015, the City Council adopted the ordinance. The following January, the City Council adopted an ordinance pertaining to parking for second residential units, now referred to as accessory dwelling units. When this ordinance was adopted, there was a clerical error that inadvertently replaced the parking requirements for multifamily ownership projects with 4 bedrooms or more that was previously adopted. Since the Planning Commission Ordinance Committee and the Planning Commission had already reviewed and recommended approval of the proposed text amendment when it was initially presented in 2015, no further review by the Planning Commission Ordinance Committee or Planning Commission is necessary. Staff has reviewed the administrative record and confirmed that the inadvertent deletion of the parking requirements being considered for reinstatement has not affected any project that was approved or that is currently pending. In conclusion, staff is recommending approval of an ordinance to reinstate the parking requirements for new residential multifamily ownership projects with 4 or more bedroom units. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions?
I don't know how we missed it.
Mr. Tremblay?
Ms. Lee, is this basically a whoops, we made a mistake and now we're just now moving, but fortunately there was no prejudice and we're just moving to fix it?
That's
Is that what this
correct.
boils down to?
That's correct.
Okay.
It was a numbering error, unfortunately.
All right, thanks.
So one of my questions is, how did it happen?
Okay.
I can respond to that. So when we have ordinances adopted, It takes several months for those to become codified in the municipal code. And while there's a pending ordinance that's been adopted but hasn't been codified, it was inadvertent that another zoning ordinance amendment occurred also, and then the numbering basically was skewed. So it had to do with having it codified, and then it was overlooked. So we've enhanced our tracking procedures to address that, because we still are going to only be codifying updates once a year based on budget.
Okay, so my next question was, how are we going to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, we've implemented tracking procedures internally to make sure that doesn't happen again.
And you already said that nothing else came in the meantime that slipped by?
Yes, there haven't been any projects approved that should have met that requirement.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is a public hearing. Oh, are there any other questions? Sorry. This is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing. I have no cards. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to us on this item? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing and open up to the council.
This is, did you ask me to read the title?
Well,
That's what I was going to ask right now. Request
Okay.
for the reading of the title, please.
usually the more.
I know, but you didn't do it.
I was.
She asked if we had any
I
discussion.
asked
We
if you
did.
had anything to say about it,
have
Mr.
nothing.
Morgan.
I will, so since you asked, I'll make a comment. I certainly understand how things happen. You caught this. Fortunately, it was a criteria that I don't know if there's any projects that have more than 4 bedrooms that have been approved in the city and whatever. So luck was on your side there. So I appreciate that you've made checks and balances there to make sure it doesn't happen again. And with that, I certainly could support the correction.
I'll request reading the title.
This is ordinance number 1158, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Camarillo, California, amending section 19.44.030, residential uses of chapter 19.44, off-street parking of Title 19, zoning of the Camarillo Municipal Code.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to waive further reading and introduce an ordinance amending the section 19.44.030 of the Camarillo Municipal Code, 19.4, off-street parking, to reinstate the parking requirements for new residential, multi-ownership projects of 4 or more bedroom units.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Now we go back to community development.
Back to the consent calendar.
Well,
Sure, we're back to the consent calendar, huh?
yes, we're actually back to the consent calendar to item F. And I don't know who requested that
I believe
item.
that was mine. I just would like to just ask that you just give us a quick synopsis of the events that took place, what we paid for it, because this was the one that we bought, that
Yes.
that was for sale, we bought it, and now we're reselling it. So what did we pay for it versus what we're selling it for, and the advantages to what you're proposing?
why?
And why?
So Mr. Mo will answer these questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, did he have to stay up late for this? He has a brand-new baby at home. Oh, okay.
So, as the council may recall, back on August 22nd of this year, we were authorized to move forward and purchase it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 square foot low-income unit. And at that time, the purchase price was $337,000. And staff, and then the further direction was to go ahead and resell that at a corrected resale value that was consistent with Health and Safety Code 50025.5, or 52.5, excuse me. And so, which, in a sense, lowered the resale, the sale of the property from the $337,000 to $186,000 to be compliant. And the benefits there is that the property, the existing covenant was only for 30 years, and it was going to expire in 17 years. So now, under the new affordable housing agreement that will be signed and recorded against the property, it'll be a 55-year covenant, and it'll reset to a new 55 years with each resale of the property. So it could be in perpetuity. So another benefit is that it would be there would be I guess the resale value is consistent with health code, and it's actually more affordable right now because we're coming up against some challenges with the high resale values that we're experiencing right now based on the old affordable housing agreements that were approved back in 2005, 2006. So with that, we have a unit that's could be affordable at the state housing policy affordability level of $186,000, and instead of tying it to CPI, which escalated the value of the property faster than the median income for Ventura County went up, it really elevated it out and made it not affordable anymore. So we're readjusting the price, correcting the future resale of the property, and we'll have the unit hopefully in perpetuity.
And what are the future resale increases dependent upon?
The county median income.
Okay, thank you.
And how does this compare to what it was originally sold at?
Well, it was originally sold, I believe it was at like 200 and, I think it was like 25,000. I'm not exactly sure on that.
That was during the boom.
But it was set a little high, and where the big issue came into is it appreciated tied to CPI, which CPI accelerated a lot faster than the median income for Ventura County, which really made it not affordable to low income.
So whoever's buying this is going to get a good deal.
Yes.
Mr. Morgan?
And hold it in maybe into perpetuity also, keeping it in that guard. So that price of that house may be the same thing 50 years from now because they're not selling it. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. If they sell it, they go to the, what? Medium.
If they stay in it, the covenant would expire in 55 years.
55 years.
If they sell it, the covenant resets.
Resets,
For
okay.
another 55-year period.
Any other questions? Mr. Tremblay?
You said a couple of minutes ago, Mr. Mose, about that this is under, it was in 2005, 2006, and this is under old agreement. Our current agreements don't have this, don't have the language that would lead to this type of circumstance,
Yes,
correct?
That's correct.
It's that language has been corrected or modified, right?
You're absolutely correct.
Right. And then secondly, this action is, back on August 31, we had quite the discussion on this, and I think a couple of us expressed concerns about doing this and whether or not it was the most efficient use of funds and leveraging money toward the purchase of more than one unit, et cetera. But this results, if I'm understanding it correctly, is if the council undertakes this action, then $186,000 is deposited into the CDBG fund.
That's
correct?
Yes.
But there are no other alternatives other than this, right? I mean, this is it. In other words, there's nothing else that we can do other than to accept this sales price, right? So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place.
That's right.
And this is solely confined to approving the sale.
Right.
Okay. Right?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
I just have a question. How was it determined who would buy the unit?
We actually had a list of qualified applicants that we were able to pull from.
So then was it a lottery?
By a lottery or top of the list? Or
There's a lottery system, and they had a number there for the air project. And those units were spoken for, so we went to the next person on the list.
And there is an income qualification?
Yes, there is. Yeah. You have to be 80% of median income based on the family size appropriate for the unit.
Right. Okay, any other questions?
I appreciate that. I just thought it was important that we kind of go over it because all
It
there
is.
was that last little piece and didn't quite know why.
And I do want to remind the council that back in August, we had indicated at the time that we were going to bring future housing questions to the council in a study session in the beginning of the year. to get some additional direction on some unique circumstances that we've discovered, and we want to get input from the council on how you would recommend that we move forward on items such as this.
Exactly.
Okay, what are the
Item
wishes of the
I
council?
Move item F on consent.
It's a motion, is there a
Second.
second? There's a second, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Next is item K. I had asked that this be pulled. Could you go ahead and give us a staff report of sorts? But let me tell you what my question is. And my question is, if we're going to it says staff will return to the city council for approval of a contract for demolition and abatement. So why are we approving the estimated cost of that now? Why not later when it comes back?
It's a good question. We wanted to start work immediately on the historical reconnaissance to determine if there's any cultural resources that we have to address before we even get into the demolition process. And we plan to use our housing bond money for the work. And when we spoke to the finance department, we didn't have an appropriation for those funds. And instead of just appropriating $5,000 for those funds, we thought it would be best practice to try to anticipate what our estimated cost would be and appropriate the full amount to work towards demolition. We still have to go through the formal bid process. And once we go through the bid process and we have anticipated contractor, then we would at that time directly allocate those funds and readjust the appropriation if necessary. So that will be coming back to you in the future with a more solid number. So this is just an estimate now for appropriation purposes.
I've just never seen a situation where we're appropriating money for something that's going to go out to bid before it goes out to bid. That's my comment. Anyway, does anybody have anybody else have any questions on it?
I liked his answer.
What are the wishes of the council?
I'll move the approval of item K on the consent calendar.
It's only an appropriation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, I think we got the cart before the horse on this, so I'm not going to support it.
But they're not, they're appropriating it, but you haven't really approved spending it because you haven't approved a contract.
Right.
So you
It's
only
similar.
got half that cart forward. not
It's
the
similar
whole
to what
thing.
we do with like CIP projects.
Yeah, it is kind of, because you're right, you still got to come back to get the final, so you really
Still
could
gotta
have
come
waited.
back.
If I could just add, it's essentially creating a project, if you will, similar to what we do with the CIP project. You know, now we've identified and estimated what is going to be needed, and so the appropriation is being made as we often do during budget season. In our if we introduce a new CIP project, we're just doing it at this point in time in the year. Essentially creating the project, creating the appropriation for the project, and then moving forward with the work by Rincon with our existing on-call contract, and then coming back to council to award and authorize the expenditure of the actual demolition work.
That makes sense.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Sorry.
That's it.
For the demo. And to prepare the specs.
Right.
And to prepare the specs
So,
for the demo.
well, that's what we're going to have Rincon do under their on-call contract right now.
Right.
Yeah, council's already approved that contract previously.
Right. So this is more in the line of a budget exercise.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Really.
Correct.
When you cut it right to its core.
Correct.
That's what this is.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. So now we go down to, we already did city manager,
You did C.
city attorney.
I had C. I've been saying that all the time. Number C, I told you.
No, I'm sorry. City attorney is above administrative service.
Okay, go ahead.
City attorney, A, Kidstream, First Amendment to rental agreement for former library building.
Yeah, that'll be Richard Petropoulos.
Good evening.
We have a
Mayor
new
and
city
council.
attorney. I didn't know you were going into that when you retired.
Well, I didn't know either, but a second career. Okay. The item before you is the First Amendment to the rental agreement with Kidstream for the former library building at 3100 Ponderosa Drive in Camarillo. The original agreement was entered into on June 15, 2018 for portions of the former library site for the potential development of a children's museum. This amendment is to add 300 additional interior square feet to the existing rental agreement. Kidstream has requested that the rent of the additional 300 square feet be at the same rental rate of the existing interior square footage that they currently pay, thereby adding an additional $55.27 to the existing rent of $272.31. Should you authorize this amendment, the total monthly rent paid by Kidstream will be $327.58.
And you don't have a map.
I do have a map.
I asked for a map to be sent, and it was sent, and I think that's the piece of paper that my grandson chewed up today.
Okay. It should be in your packet as well.
But it's all black, and we can't tell
Here
what.
it is. The additional 300 square feet is the subject area in the right-hand upper corner.
And where is that exactly? That's for storage?
That's what they'll use it for, is storage, yes. And so the existing area that they currently rent is in red, and you can see the common areas there where the bathroom is as you go up into the hall, and then the subject area is that 300 square feet in the upper.
So I thought they were renting a small amount currently.
The total, I believe, is 1,788, including the patio on the left. The new square footage will be 2,088.
So I'm just lost on this diagram. Can you tell me where that's the little room off of the large room where the fountain used to be years and years ago?
This is not large enough for you really to see it. It's a lounge area where there is an office. Let me see if I can do that. There's an office area here, and then this is a lounge area here that they're using for storage.
Okay, so this isn't the whole library?
No.
Oh, okay. That's just the front of the
There's
library.
kind of a back door, and it's kind of next to that back door area there.
There's a meeting room in the front part that they're running, and back of
In the back, yeah.
This area.
Well, they're
here
renting all the
this-
red stuff.
This is the area that's the entry, and that's the first community room there, and the patio off to the left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's what I call the small room.
Small room. And there is an outside entrance to it on that one? That's what I can remember.
The drawing depicts a doorway there, but to tell you the truth, I'm not sure if there's an outside entrance there or not. My recollection would be no, but I could be wrong.
Excuse me for just a second. If that's the room we're talking about, you got a patio on the left and the room there. You do have an outside entrance from the right. Below, you have an outside entrance right there, and it's outside of the whole the rest of the library.
Right here.
Right near the bathroom. Where is down there?
Oh, no, you're in the wrong.
I don't think that's adjacent to the bathroom.
The wrong.
No, this is the existing area that they currently rent.
Yes.
This is the subject area that they're adding.
Oh, okay. You meant, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about this side here for the outside entrance. There is one there.
Yes, that is correct, but that's in the existing area, not
How do they get to the
area.
other area? How do they get to it?
They walk through the library.
Oh, through the library, okay.
I guess I have a silly question. What else are we using that library for, and why don't we just let them have the whole thing?
At this point in time, nothing. However, to allow them to have the total use would increase their rent.
Oh, to keep the cost down, okay.
Have you heard anything about their fundraising efforts? Have they talked to you about it?
I am not current with their fundraising efforts.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion?
Sure, I would move that we authorize the city manager to sign the First Amendment to rental agreement with Kidstream for the former library building.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. City clerk can figure out who was first.
Yeah.
Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Now we go down to parking restrictions at Metrolink train station. Resolution establishing parking restrictions at the Metrolink train station parking lots.
And we have another city attorney doing that. That'll be Dave Klotzel.
Oh, we're going to have a lot of city attorneys here.
No additional cost for this. So in the past, City Council has discussed the proposed parking restrictions down at the Metrolink train station parking lots. We're talking about the, as shown on the map in the agenda packet, the two parking lots, one adjacent to Lewis Road, the west lot, and then the east lot adjacent to Dawson Drive. And the issues that arise from time to time in the parking lots have to do with vehicles being stored for long amounts of times and or abandoned, and also persons seemingly living in vehicles, RVs, and that on the in the parking lots. So, as previously discussed, with some options about restricting park time, putting time limit restrictions, and other restrictions, we've come up and centered with the restrictions outlined in the resolution that would limit the parking to 7 consecutive days at the Metrolink parking lots, and then also restricting the parking of oversized vehicles to address these concerns. The resolution does include language and provisions that if there is a need for a train rider to park longer than the 7 days, they could ahead of time, if they have their travel plans and their train ticket, present that at the police department and receive a free parking pass, basically to put on their dash, indicating what that they'll be parking there for longer than 7 days, and that would allow them to park there for that length of time. Additionally, if somebody ends up parking there and isn't aware of the need for the parking pass, and receives a citation and presents their valid train ticket for travel and verifies that at the police department, that citation will be waived at the police department. A part of this resolution also includes the authorization to remove vehicles that are in parking violation with the restrictions in the resolution. So that's a tow-away restriction that would be implemented. And the typical process, how that would happen is be made aware that there's a vehicle that's been there for longer than the 7 days. It would be marked, tires marked to verify. Then it would take another 7 days to verify that that is the case. The typical procedure is that a citation is then issued, and another length of time up to another 7 days to verify that the recipient of the citation has had ample time to know that that violation has occurred, and then the car could be towed. The resolution, although as I mentioned, does allow or does provide the authorization to remove the vehicle immediately once that first 7 days is documented, and that allows the provision for if there is a need for whatever reason, if it's a health and safety type of issue, that it could be acted on sooner with a tow-away imposed. So the VCTC actually owns these parking lots, and they recently took action and adopted their ordinance 2018-01, which is attached and in their packet, essentially delegating the authorization to the cities that have VCTC-owned parking lots within their jurisdictions to implement and enforce parking restrictions. So that authority has been granted. That was at their September meeting that was adopted. So upon council's approval of this resolution, appropriate signage would be installed indicating the restrictions implemented. And that wraps up my staff report, and be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Question, Mr.
I just have a quick
Mrs. McDonald.
This is in addition to all of the other parking restrictions we have in place, the no camping, the no...
That's correct. Yeah, there's
one
also, as referenced in the staff report, there is a restriction basically limiting the use to certain parking spots for the electrical vehicle charging stations. That is in place. So yes, this is in addition to anything
no
that already is
camping,
existing.
all
Yes,
of that
no
stuff.
camping, and then the other one is essentially enforcing existing ordinances that we have in place. The other one is vehicles must park within designated spaces. Yes, so those existing restrictions stay in place.
That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Tremblay.
So, Mr. Klotzel, just to recap, how are we going to get word out about, assuming the council undertakes this action tonight that
Right.
staff is recommending, how is the city going to publicize this?
So we could use our informational channels on the website and Facebook to inform that, and of course signs could be or will be installed, we could sometimes with new signage we add flags to highlight new signage installed. Could do that. Often the other course that's taken is if there are first-time violations of people that just aren't aware of those restrictions, the PD could issue warnings rather than citations at the start.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so you have to have signage as a matter of law.
Correct.
So we would do that signage. I don't know if there's a way to put flags on like you do with the new stop signs or not, but I think it would be helpful to draw attention to that signage wherever it gets posted. And my suggestion would also be that there be a page or something devoted on the website saying, park here. Here's what you need to know to make sure that the word gets out, and including some information by Facebook so we can get the message out.
How about attaching something to the place where you buy tickets?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we could
Let's try to do that too.
I have one more, and I'm assuming you probably will do this anyway, but you will notify VCTC that we have taken this action, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And then we could ask VCTC to do something through their media sources as well, which would hit all your Metrolink writers and hopefully those who take Amtrak as well. I don't know how, it's not as easy to get to those writers.
Well, especially to those who buy their tickets online, and I think Amtrak riders who are going for a period of 7 days or more probably do that. But the short-term Amtrak riders buy their tickets there.
There. Yeah, so if you have it there, but I think utilizing VCTC's website and there would be a good thing.
Yes, that's a very good suggestion. We'll do that. And I just want to also reiterate, we have been in touch with VCTC since the very beginning when we've been contemplating these types of restrictions, hence the need then that VCTC went forward and established their own ordinance, delegating that authorization to us. So VCTC, the director, is on board with what is being planned to be done out there.
And I might report that at first the board kind of couldn't figure out why, and then as soon as you started to talk about the issues, they decided, oh, great, the city can do it. I guess, do they want to have to be the ones that deal with it? So it wasn't an easy sale once they started to think about who would do the work and the issues that were at hand.
Any other questions? No, I have some things I have first. I have a problem with language. And my problem is with subject, verb, and stuff agreeing, and nouns and the pronouns that follow them agreeing. So I direct your attention to large page 3, number B2. A person may park, could we change there to a vehicle, not their vehicle? There is plural. A person or persons may park their vehicle, but a person isn't a there. At the train station, parking lots, 8 to 21 consecutive days, if that person, again, is singular, shows there, shows a, I would recommend we change there to a, train ticket to the Camarillo Police Department and obtains a parking pass for the length of a, not their, train trip and displays the parking pass on the dashboard of the, not their, vehicle. Any ticket-holding patron, singular, who receives a citation for parking longer than 7 days, but before the vehicle is towed, can present the, not their, citation and the return train ticket, not their, to the police department, and the citation shall be waived at the police station. Now, I expect Jan to say something about shall.
Oh, I don't care about the shall. But how, and I understand why you're doing what you're doing, but what I don't understand is making it so that it shows that it belongs to them.
Right.
A return ticket could be anybody's return ticket, so how do you make it possessive in the...
His or her.
Somehow it's got to get it back so it belongs.
His or her. I assume it came in as there because whoever wrote it didn't want to say his or her, but his or her is the way to do it.
Well, the person that wrote it was me. And I had thought, and it's been a while since I studied grammar, but that there could apply to a single individual.
I don't believe so.
If you,
Can we Google it?
okay, well, perhaps you're right. I don't know. I don't have a dictionary in front of me to be able to confirm it, but that was my intent, was to identify that we were talking about that person's vehicle, not just a vehicle, and we were talking about that person's ticket, not just some ticket at random. So that's why I used the word there. But if it's not grammatically correct, then we should change it.
What do you do in the legal world? Do you always use the he or she? What do you normally do when you're writing?
I often see it says he or she, but then, you could substitute that by the person's, apostrophe S.
That person's.
That person's.
Could we have this looked
There's
at?
alternatives.
Because I agree with him on there.
I think it's usage, but I don't think it's accepted usage yet.
I could go get a dictionary and we could check it out.
Well, I can guarantee you the dictionary that the city provided me in my office 31 years ago is going to agree with me, but I don't know what a new dictionary would say.
I can't get internet around, I'm telling you. All right.
But I think we have somebody in the audience to testify on this. Mr. Brown?
There, belonging to or associated with a person of unspecified sex.
Well, you are right then.
Exactly.
I take it all back.
It's happened before.
Perfect.
I learned something.
So we take back all that, right?
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
And I would suggest that this law, if we, when does this take effect?
I have the answer on that. It's immediate. Resolution takes effect immediately.
Okay. I would suggest that we not go out and cite tickets 7 days from now, simply because there could be people who, and start towing, because there could be people who are on 10-day trips right now.
We can't cite, we can't cite until we post it with signs.
Okay,
So
very good.
the resolution itself takes effect immediately. However, until there's signage out there, it can't be enforced.
So my question should have been, when will it be enforced? Not right now.
The answer to that question is when signs are posted.
Okay. And so if people don't know about it, I'm still concerned about the people who are on longer than 7-day trips.
Sorry to prolong your misery, Madam Mayor. Okay, but assuming that council passes this tonight, when do you anticipate signage would occur?
That would be a City Attorney Klotzel question.
Mr. Klotzel? Is there a little bit of lead time so we can get the word out?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. We've going to take a little bit of time to formulate all the wording, exactly how we want it on the signs, order the signs, procure the signs, install the signs. We're talking a few weeks.
Meantime, between ordering, procurement, and installation, the word can go out.
Correct.
Also, Madam Mayor, more directly to your point, for those who are along trips during the time that this is implemented, in the resolution, it says specifically, any ticket holding patron who receives a citation for parking longer than 7 days, but before the vehicle is towed, can present their citation and their return train ticket to the police department, and the citation shall be waived at the police department.
Right. And I guess the key there is towed. So my part of the enforcement wanting to know is the towing going to start immediately after the notification and the signs are up and 7 days later? And the answer is going to be, you're probably going to be a little lenient right in there?
No, there's actually a procedure there, and if I could have the police chief come up and describe that, I think that'll clear things up.
Good evening, Mayor. So with respect to the signage and the enforcement, although we'll have the legal authority to tow a vehicle after 7 days, what we typically would do is after 7 days, we would basically cite the vehicle, let another 7 days go by, and actually place a notice on it, a notice to tow in an additional 7 days. So we typically are not going to tow vehicles right after 7 days.
Okay. I was just concerned about people who are on a 10 or 12 or whatever 2-week train vacation to wherever and come back and their car's towed and some ordinance took effect in the meantime.
Right, right. But we do have the authority to do so after
Right.
7 days if there's a certain situation that would require it.
Right, right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, are we ready for a motion on this?
We are. I am.
Good.
May I make it?
Yes.
I move that the council adopt a resolution establishing parking restrictions at the Metrolink train station parking lot.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We've already taken care of the city manager's items, so now, Mr. Morgan, we are down to administrative services, item C on the consent calendar.
I just wanted to ask do we have any items in mind that we're looking for?
Mr. Morgan, we do not. This is a continuation agreement. These agreements have a 3-year life. We do renew them, so we have the ability to access those other agencies' materials should the need arise, but there is no current need that I'm aware of.
I was just asking, maybe we might want to know what those are, but if you have none, it's just an ongoing thing, fine. I move, any other questions first? I'm sorry.
I don't think anybody else had any questions on that one.
Okay.
Is there a motion, Mr. Morgan?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. I'll withdraw.
The motion and a second. Please vote on item C for the consent calendar. Motion carries unanimously. So we do, at a later time, have to go back to another part of the closed session. We do have to go to the second part of the study session, but in the meantime, we're going to go to new business, oral communications, information items which do not require action. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, earlier this evening, you had several members of the public come and ask you to reconsider your default tier rate. If the council is interested in doing that, we are under a time constraint. This city council needs to, they've already made a decision, but if you want to reconsider, it needs to be done by October 31st. Now, any member of the public may request to have an item that is within the city's subject matter jurisdiction be placed on the agenda. The item must be submitted in writing with relevant backup material to the city manager for transmittal to the city council for their information. Upon the request of at least 2 city council members at a city council meeting, the city manager will place the requested item on the appropriate agenda, and staff will provide an agenda report with relevant backup material. The issue here, Madam Mayor, is if that procedure is followed by these citizens, we will run out of time and you won't be able to take action on the item. However, if at least if a council member at this meeting makes a request to have this placed on the agenda at the next meeting, and it is agreed upon by at least one other city council member, it can be placed on the next agenda. I'm going to leave that for your consideration.
Other council members who'd like to bring this back? I think we pretty much thoroughly discussed this when we did.
Done.
I think we made our decision.
Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney.
I have no items.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Well, the first one is the Cameron Ranch House Board. Charlotte and I attended. We met in the barn. And I'm thinking we're going to be meeting there all the time now. I hope so. I kind of like that barn in there.
It's cold in the winter.
Yeah, you're true there. But they have the heaters, too. They bring in those little up-top heaters. Anyway, we went through a lot of things like the agreement, our agreement, what do you call the thing? Our Charlotte, that agreement we went through for a long time, they did. I'll let Charlotte talk about that. Anyway, we went through an agreement there that's been tossed back and forth for a long time.
Bylaws.
Bylaws, yeah. It's been tossed back and forth for a long time, and hopefully we're coming to the end on the bylaws. Eagle Scout Award I went to, and that was in a barn also. That was in the Boy Scout barn. And Charlotte and I both attended that one. That was a very good little meeting. I have, oh yeah, here it is. The mini meals. I attended mini meals, but the reason I want to report this is that it was a large attendance of people at Padre Serra to raise money for mini meals. And mini meals are held in 2 different places every week. One is at the Presbyterian Church and at St. Mary's. And they do free meals. And a lot of seniors that can't afford things can go there. And so this was a money-raising effort, and it was very successful. The place was full. So I'm proud of our people here in Camarillo. That's it, Your Honor. Oh, Air Pollution Control Board, I'm sorry. That was a fast meeting because we went through a bunch of the legislation from Sacramento, but also we learned a sad thing. Mike Villegas, who's running that thing for a long time, is retiring, and he'll be retiring this year. And so we're going to miss him. And that's the same thing with you and VCTC. But Mike has been a great job, and I've been going to Santa Barbara with him every quarter for the Tri-County meeting, of the Air Quality Board meeting. I'm their rep. And so we're going to miss him, and trying to find somebody to replace him is going to be tough because he's very good at knowing all the laws and all the new regulations and everything. But anyway, that's it.
Mrs. McDonald.
Thank you very much. Meeting-wise, we did have a admin committee meeting. Oops, I'm not on. Sorry, I'll go that again. Meetings attended, the VCOG admin committee meeting, and I think you'll all appreciate our next subject that we hope to have at our next meeting is a presentation by PARS. And so we're ahead of that, but in talking to the others, they really wanted to know what we have done in dealing with our pension obligations. So I'll let you know if I hear anything different than what he told us. But I thought it was great to suggest something that we've worked on hard, and hopefully it might help somebody else. Also, VCTC did indeed meet last week as well. I know we have a lot to do, so I won't go too much further. I meant to go get the date, but there is a broadband consortium meeting in the next week or so. So if anyone is really interested in bringing broadband to Ventura, and this is throughout Ventura County, but they're going to talk about some of the pros and cons. And I'm sure you probably should be able to find it on our website, I hope. Oh, you have the, great.
It's tomorrow morning at, starts at 8:30.
Great. So 8:30 in the morning, anybody that's interested. The nice thing is they're not only going to, it's not going to be just the governmental agencies, they're going to have the vendors themselves talking. So if you're really interested in seeing at least the beginning, it's at the, what are we calling now, the Ventura County.
Education.
Not the superintendent's, I'm sorry, the Community Foundation building. Thank you. In the morning, but it should be interesting. There's a lot of obstacles. It's not quite as easy as it sounds. And then every jurisdiction has to deal with the cell towers, and when you're doing that small cells, it takes a lot more of those things to get it where you want it to go. So it isn't as simple as it sounds, unfortunately, as nothing ever is. And speaking of things not being simple, can you just give us a quick update on where we are in our paving project? A comment was made last night at one of our functions that we only pave during election year, which we know isn't true. But you are in the middle of a big one, so maybe you could give everybody an update on where we are in our pavement management plan.
Sure. Yes, we are in full swing in our pavement management plan with several paving projects going on. 2 right now at this time. A slurry seal project, which is in the final stages. The public will see some of the more arterial roads that are being slurry sealed right now. Mission Oaks and Flynn, Upland. Final striping is being installed there. So we have the slurry seal project underway. Then we also have what we're calling the Camarillo Corridor paving project. It's actually been going on the last couple nights. Again, even tonight they've started again out on Carmen here in Daly. Is underway with the rubberized asphalt overlay paving project. So that'll be going on the rest for a couple nights yet this week. And then next Sunday night, as presented last meeting here to council, giving the information on the rest of Daily Drive from Lantana over to Calle La Roda will be paved starting next Sunday night for 4 nights of night work. So that's where we are. We're in about, I think it's year 5 of our 7-year plan, and we intend to be actually probably year 4, and I think we have 2 more years to finish. Within 6 years, our 7-year plan is what we're on schedule for right now. We have another overlay project coming up that we're getting ready to go out to bid on, and that'll be awarded here in the next few months with continuing paving. Again, our annual CIP paving projects was for $5 million a year. That's budgeted each year to maintain our streets in the top condition that they are.
Perfect. And you do a great job of that. Can I just ask one quick question? With the noise at night, have we had complaints, or did we warn everyone so they were prepared to know what that sound was out there?
Right. We definitely warned everyone, distributed notices out to all the residents, the nearby adjacent residents, along with all the businesses. And so far, I'm not aware that we've received any complaints of noise overnight. And we're going to continue to monitor that and respond accordingly.
Good job. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Kildee?
No meeting, but I just want to compliment the mayor on the tree planting today. That was wonderful and really shows the long relationship that Port Hueneme has with the city of Camarillo. And it's great that, you know, in this time of division, that cities come together on many, many things, and that's really great. And there's nothing better than planting a tree.
That's right.
Good job. And that's all I have.
Mr. Tremblay?
As far as meetings are concerned, but we did have one meeting. On September 28th, we had an Economic Development Committee meeting.
Thank you. I forgot about that. Yes.
And October 1, the mayor and I had a liaison committee meeting with CSU Channel Islands, which was an excellent meeting, and I think, Madam Mayor, you will want to speak to certain issues, but let me just comment on one in particular, and that is with regard to the strategic plan that CSUCI worked on for a long period of time that they have published, and it is an excellent document. It is not on the shelf. They are implementing it, but there are particular goals in the educational excellence and capacity and sustainability items with respect to having students work, basically expanding opportunities for students to develop a sense of civic engagement and become catalysts for economic and social progress in the community, and together with that, working in concert with business and community leadership to develop programs that, and I'm quoting here, contribute to a robust economy and engage citizenship. But those are words on paper. CSUCI actually has metrics to analyze those, and I know that we have a proponent of metrics on our senior staff, and in this case, Mr. Clifford, I know I'm looking at you, I'm sorry to pick on you, but in this case they have some metrics that they are going to utilize, so I commend CSUCI for that. On October 4, I had a Clean Power Alliance meeting in Los Angeles that I attended, and then on October 9, an Economic Development Collaborative Executive Committee meeting. That's it on meetings. Just want to go back real quickly, though. There were a number of things from the last meeting that these were from resident issues that were brought to me. The first one was on the increase or changing in flight path for Camarillo Airport, and that was something I think that Mr. Morgan and Mr. Kildee were going to check with the airport authority on, or staff was going to do so, and come back with a report on the apparent increase in overflights over part of the city.
I had a talk with him 2 days ago that I want to talk about on the agenda when we go. I'm going to talk to Mr. Kildee because we have a forum that night, and I'd like you address that a little bit for me, Kevin. But I did alert them because we get 2 different areas complaining now.
If we could follow up, anyway, I'm just
yes,
like to
we will
follow up on that. I know there are several things that Public Works, or he's now, I guess, the second city attorney, Mr. Klotzel, is following up on, but on the Old Town, the traffic signal synchronization item, the crosswalk markings. I think the left turn from Berry Street onto Lewis, onto 34, that was at least going to be reviewed, as well as the apparent increase in accidents at Las Posas and Temple, or at least the perceived increase. I'm not quite sure.
It's always been a big site for accidents.
Well, right. The reason I brought it up last time is because a resident brought it to me and said it just seems to be increasing more, and what I had asked for was the data and for staff to study that, so I'm looking forward to having a report come back on that, as well as there's a parking issue on Dawson Drive, so I'm expecting a report back from staff on that. And then finally, cell phone service in the northwest portion of the city, or maybe I'll just say northern portion of the city. Northwest is fine. And that's something that we want to continue, and I'm looking at you, Mr. Clifford, on that we want to continue to work on actively so we can make some progress on that. And with that, that's it. Thanks.
Mr. Kildee.
I already went.
Oh. Well, I skipped a person last time, so I ask you twice this time.
All right.
Make up for it. I have several things. I attended the liaison committee meeting with Channel Islands, and the next day I attended the RDP 21 meeting, also with Channel Islands. Dr. Beck spoke at both. And so I'm going to kind of combine the two reports she gave me and give you some information. As you might remember, when was it? 2 years ago when I resigned from the site authority, they were in the process of selling all of the housing that's not for students. In other words, all the housing other than dormitories to, who is it, Kennedy Wilson? To a private entity. And the university gets 7.5% of the income. So that is income to the university from that housing that I guess they weren't getting before. I did ask how much of that housing is currently occupied, because if you remember at the very beginning when they planned to build that housing, it was for staff, professors, people associated with the university, and then there was a whole list of other people. And so in that order, I think next came people who work for other school districts, people who work for the Navy, and on down to the general public. But it was not designated as student housing, and students were not to live there, although they, in the meantime, converted one of the apartment buildings to house students. But now they are looking at a development with the same developer on the adjacent 32 acres. So that's the 32 acres that would be toward the mountains that burned, if you remember right, during that fire. And on that, I'm looking for the numbers, they're going to put 118 single-family houses, 155 senior low-income houses, and 340 apartments, which comes to 613 additional units out there. And I asked how many students they have on campus now. There are 1,600 dormitory beds for students. We also asked about parking and the parking at the Metrolink lot, because it's designated as a dual purpose. It's designated as parking for Metrolink, and it's also designated as parking for students who want to take the bus out to the university. And we ask about their parking requirements and for parking spaces out there. So they have one parking space for every 3 students who live on site. And right now that's, I'm not sure of this note. Right now that's 2.72. One parking space for 2.72 students, but it goes up and down as enrollment goes up and down. Our concern with the question was, as the student, right now there are 7,000 or so students.
Yeah, not 5, 7.
Yeah, 7, that's what I said.
I know, but last night they mentioned
7,000, and there are 1,600 employees. And so the concern was that as both of those numbers grow And as Metrolink use goes up as gas prices go up, and gas prices are starting to go up right now. And so the Metrolink parking lot is filling earlier and earlier in the morning. So, as I go by there at 5:30, 5:45, I'm pretty sure it's not students that are parking there. It's Metrolink users and Amtrak users. And so as that goes up, we're going to be talking about parking more and more with them. And so they are doing a transportation demand study and looking at what all they can do for parking, because that Metrolink lot is not going to, the original plan, if you remember, was that there were going to be 20,000 students out there sometime. That was supposed to be by 2020, but it's not going to happen by 2020, and there are a lot of reasons, and that's fine. I'm not saying that's bad. But when they do reach the top limit, we need to be working together with them on parking, student parking, especially the students who park here in the daytime and take the bus. I think that was what I wanted to talk to you about, that one. I also attended the Camarillo Ranch Foundation board meeting, and it was their bylaws they're talking about. They did approve the changes, the proposed changes, and they will be coming to the city council for us to approve, because if you remember, the bylaws have to be approved by them and by us, because they're a foundation that was created by the city council. They're supposed to be independent and an operating agreement for the building, but they're not proposing to change that. They're suggesting some changes in the bylaws, and so we'll be seeing those at a later date. And that's all I have, so we can go to we'll recess to the study session for the CEQA guidelines, and then we will go into closed session before we adjourn.